Ricky Flex, what was your anticipation going in to A Quiet Place day one? What do you think about this concept? And what do you think about going to a prequel instead of A Quiet Place, let's say, part three?
So if you had to do a prequel, I love this idea with the Quiet Place. Like I love this idea, not because it was day one necessarily, but in the city, because the first two more rural America, out like not a lot going on, so there's not a lot of aliens going on. So we're revving up the action here. So it's already a slight difference there. Um, we're also not really doing a family, right? The first two center around a family. This one more someone who will get into it. But Lupita Nyong'o, someone that could hold the screen together on her own. I think she does a great job in this. Someone that just captures you when you're watching the big screen. So I think she was perfect for this type of role where you're not out, like speaking a lot. That's when she's at her best, really. When you think of Us, 12 Years a Slave, this part was perfect for her, and it proved. And after seeing it, yes, undoubtedly the perfect person for this part. And overall, like I think this is reliable IP now. You had a director here, Michael Sarnowski, who did Pig with Nicolas Cage, Alex Wolff, who also makes an appearance here, and that was a good movie, but totally different. I think that was the big question mark was the director and can he take on a big blockbuster versus a small movie about a chef going kind of AWOL. So I think he lived up to his billing. I think everything here, expectations were pretty high, and I think it met almost every single one of the expectations going in.
Ooh. This was you're right. When you're kind of saying it was risky, like to make this movie with Michael Sarnowski with Pig, never done an action movie before. We had A Quiet Place, which was a surprise horror hit from director John Krasinski that he also starred in. Emily Blunt's also there. They make A Quiet Place Part Two. Obviously, Krasinski can't stay on for more than one scene of that film, but you strip him away, you put in Killian Murphy. It's like, okay, that movie worked too. And instead of making A Quiet Place Part Three, they said, okay, we're going to make a prequel to this story. We're going to include none of the characters aside from Jaimin Hansu from either film, right? He's the only connective tissue we had here. So I think the one thing that I didn't have a question mark with wasn't Lupita Nyong'o for the reasons you just said, like amazing physical performer and someone that when you look at her performance in Us, she doesn't have to say a lot to tell the audience a lot, you know. And her in this movie, really great, really great. And I think this movie also just made a lot of like small, clever decisions, you know, to have this like New York City setting to take away like the countryside or the Ozarks, wherever the frick they are, right? In A Quiet Place Part Two, but to have it go to New York City, 93 decibels or something was like the subtitle, right? As you are watching this in the first scene. I thought it was really cool. They didn't really change the world in a lot of different ways, meaning like the Quiet Place world. We already knew like these aliens are afraid of water and they kind of take advantage of that in this movie. I was the one thing I was kind of disappointed with is that we still don't know like what these aliens are doing, why they got there. I was hoping that as much as I liked this movie, I was hoping that we actually answer that question, Ricky Flex. I was really disappointed that we don't really find out more about these creatures. And I thought that's like kind of what a prequel should do.
So I at first I agree with you, but after seeing the movie, I kind of am glad they didn't because they kind of wanted to focus on Lupita Nyong'o's character and kind of like the themes around her character and trying to keep it as small as possible, trying to keep it within New York City, keep it contained, and not try to tackle this whole alien invasion, apocalyptic type of movie where you could see in other movies that's where it kind of gets questionable, you know. And a movie I kept thinking of, that came out after A Quiet Place Part Two that has clear inspirations from it is The Tomorrow War with Chris Pratt, and they're trying to
Okay.
tackle you like, oh, this is what's this is going on, this is going on, why this and that. It's like if this movie tried to do that while also trying to intertwine these themes and everything, then it becomes a 2.5, 2 hour, 40-minute movie, and it just gets bogged down. And I think in this, an hour 40 minutes, quick, just a 100-minute runtime. It's quick. You tackle those themes. It's pretty easy, relatable, and you get even more action than the previous two. And that's kind of some of the things that you want to have in not only a movie but an IP movie to keep people keep people like engaged. So I think like you're right. I thought I was gonna be on your level after the movie, but I kind of did a 180.
Yeah, so I with if you're making like a franchise, like you kind of want to like you want to get into more detail about like what made the world the way it is. You know, that's not what I was kind of looking for here, but instead, and this is a good thing, they made a small like niche story within this universe. Like this prequel, I after we're gonna get into like the spoilers later, but after it ended, I wasn't saying I can't wait to see the sequel with so and so character from this. I can't wait to see the next spin-off from A Quiet Place. You know, I just thought this was literally fit perfectly. It fit perfectly into this world where you're changing the setting. You're introducing a very different type of character, two different loners that have a newfound type of family that come together. You know, I just thought it did something different. It fit into the world, and it's just kind of non-traditional when you think of what a prequel for a horror franchise could do. But let's get into Lupita Nyong'o, and let's talk about her as the lead in this film. I always find her to be one of the most underrated actresses that we have going right now. You know, like it seems like someone that kind of flies under the radar despite being an Oscar winner for 12 Years a Slave. We already talked about her movie with Jordan Peele with Us. We know her in Black Panther, and it just seems like even like the Marvel universe doesn't really take advantage of like, oh, that's Lupita Nyong'o. You know, it seems like she is more than capable in every role that she has. Here, she does a lot of heavy lifting. You said it's a short runtime, which I think is one of the best things about this movie, but she's on screen for nearly 90 of those 100 minutes. It's kind of insane. And with obviously minimal dialogue. She was pretty prime time in this movie, and she has an interesting element to her. She is someone that is terminally ill and has cancer, and she kind of like she has a motive that is so unique, and I think was once again clever by her going to this marionette show with this hospice care group that she belongs to. She hates the world. She's a former poet, and she kind of goes on this mission with her service cat to get one final slice of pizza before the world burns to the ground. You know, I just thought this is something you don't see with a franchise prequel, sequel, whatever it may be. To have it like that personal of a story and then like implement the emotionality, especially in the third act of the movie. Once again, pretty bold thing. And I think a lot of it hinges on the performance of Lupita Nyong'o, who I thought was just freaking awesome.
Yeah, I totally agree. And for her, like she's had such a weird career where it's like she's like the hottest thing in the town, right? 12 Years a Slave took on Hollywood, right? A huge project, or I should say, a lot of buzz with that project. Ends up living to the hype, and she gets the Oscar, a big Oscar from that. And then like she continues to do a few other things. She has Us in 2019. I think she should have been nominated. A huge snub at the minimum, if not at least just to get nominated for an Oscar. So you have that, but then yeah, and then she was just in Black Panther the year before. So it's like obviously I agree with you on the MCU front. I was pitching for her to freaking be the next Black Panther in Wakanda Forever. But it seems like before this movie, it's like Hollywood's kind of forgotten about her a little bit, or like what she's best at. Like she was in the 355 with all those like Sebastian Stan was in that movie, and a bunch of other like famous female actresses were in that movie. That was a dumpy-worthy movie. She's in a couple other things that were just like, eh. She was Maz in Star Wars: Rise of Skywalker. It's just like,
Yeah.
why isn't Hollywood like, or is it like a Hollywood problem with her, as in like not picking her for the right projects, or is she just picking the wrong projects? It's just interesting. I think here's a perfect example of like, oh, we have this project IP project, and then you're perfect for it. It seems like a perfect blend, and you're absolutely right. On screen for almost the entire 100-minute runtime, and she did a great job.
Yeah, it seems like every 2 to 3 years, like Lupita Nyong'o just reminds us that she's an Oscar winner, you know, and then she's just doing a bunch of bullshit that like no one's watching or paying attention to, and you have like the Nick Young question marks that are just surrounding your head, and you're just saying what's going on here, you know. And I don't know if it was just like being thrown into like the world of Black Panther, having to do those two movies, not knowing what was like coming afterwards, if she was gonna have to appear in another type of project, things like that. Like she's an essential part of the Wakanda sector of the MCU, obviously, but like never has done anything aside from Black Panther. So like that's not necessarily holding her back in my eyes, but I don't know. She probably has a lot of stuff going on that we just have no idea. But I think she also had amazing chemistry with Joseph Quinn. And Joseph Quinn, we talked about it at the top, a guy who has a lot going on right now, someone who's going to be with us for years and years with movie releases. He's going to be on, it's going to be mentioned in this podcast for a long time to come. I was kind of surprised with his character in this movie. I remember talking about the trailer with you, Ricky, and we saw the way he was dressed. We're talking New York City setting. He has like a tie on, looks like he's coming from work, shirt tucked in, and it kind of gave off like a frat boy type of vibe or a finance bro. That's what I should say. Finance bro type of vibe. And it couldn't be further from that indicator. It was someone that is, first of all, not from this country and someone that is alone, just like Lupita Nyong'o is alone. And his motivation is that he kind of wants to survive. He doesn't know this setting. He notices that Lupita Nyong'o very much does know this setting and is very confident in what she's doing. She's kind of going against like the path of other people. He's kind of entranced by that. And I think he's just amazing at having puppy dog eyes, honestly, in this movie. And that's why I'm saying like Joseph Quinn, like great acting in this movie. Does it give me confidence he could be a badass villain in Gladiator, be like the next Commodus? I don't know. I don't know if that character is going to even be similar to Commodus, or is it? Can he be like a frat bro Johnny Storm in the Fantastic Four? I don't know, but all I know is great physical acting here, great with Lupita Nyong'o, who obviously is an elevated type of actor, so it's a lot for Joseph Quinn when this is his first major movie role. I thought, honestly, he killed it. And he had, I don't know, out of the 100 minutes, he's probably on there for at least 70 of them, maybe 60, not saying much. It was pretty good. I liked it, especially third act.
I agree with you. It's so weird too, because like Lupita Nyong'o, known for her eyes, and like Joseph Quinn, I totally agree with you. He had like teary eyes the entire movie, and like every time Lupita Nyong'o is like, "Go away," he would just be like, like puppy dog face. It's like, all right, you could stay, you could hang around here, and then he proves himself useful. No spoilers. So I totally agree with you there, and I also just will say, related to Joseph Quinn, I really think in this movie, again, you said it, first feature film, right? True first feature film, and to come out like swinging like this is pretty impressive. I really do think, because a lot of it's also green screen, and I think Stranger Things had a part to play in it as well. But like this was on a backlot set in England. Like a lot of this is pretty new to him as well, and to be able to, because there were a lot of scenes where it was also him and the monsters, and there's one in particular in this movie that I won't spoil that I was like, holy crap, that would have been one of my favorite scenes in the movie. And I was like, I was on the edge of my seat. The suspensefulness and everything about it, I loved it. And I was like, damn, that's pretty good for a first time like true blue like feature film actor. I was very impressed.
Yeah, because they gave him the opportunity also, like in the action sequences, like the terror that he has, but also times that he's one-on-one with Lupita Nyong'o, like during that final act. And you see like a charm that he has. And it seems like he's also filled with anxiety for the first two acts of the movie. And he seems so thankful, grateful for what Lupita Nyong'o's character does for him. And then he is able to somewhat return the favor to her. It's a really special scene, and you don't see that type of scene in that jazz club / bar where Lupita Nyong'o's dad used to perform. You don't see like a franchise movie in the third act taking a chunk of time, like 15 minutes of the movie, to kind of like slow everything down. And I thought like this movie, that's why it's like, it just feels like, yeah, it's set in this world that you can't talk and you have to be silent, right? We're just taking on with new characters, and we're not trying to do too much. We're trying to keep it intimate and personal. And I feel like that's where a lot of franchises go wrong. This one, bold with them doing that in the third act.
And a part of it as well, going back to what your question earlier, it's like, that's why I'm kind of glad like this was intimate and very small, and they're not trying to tackle too many big things. Like why the aliens are here in the first place. Oh, what's the president doing? Or what's everyone else doing? It's like, no, like it's all focused on a woman who's in hospice, Joseph Quinn's character, coming from law school, and they're just in New York City trying to survive this thing. And you see the elements that you have in the other movies, the first two, to kind of put in the back of your mind while watching this, which I think was incredibly helpful. And I also want to say there's other things, though, that were in the back of your mind that weren't helpful in this, and I could talk about that in a bit.
Something that, well, first off, like when I think about like the scariness of this movie, I don't know if me seeing it in the afternoon, I didn't find this movie scary at all. I don't know. I thought the action sequences were cool. The scene underwater, right, like through the subway, like that was a cool sequence. And obviously the thrill of the final act as Joseph Quinn's character is trying to make this boat. I thought that was just more of a great action scene. You know, I did not think of this movie as a horror franchise movie. It just felt like a little almost like not sci-fi, but it felt like it wasn't trying to terrify audiences. Maybe in the first act a little bit, especially with what happens with Alex Wolff's character. But it seems like, but you just know what's coming. You like know it's like, oh, and like you have an opportunity to clench like flex your abs a little bit. You kind of know like, yeah, it's gonna be quiet, but it's not gonna be quiet for long. Like because of the first two movies in this franchise, you kind of like know what the beats are a little bit. So I think that kind of hurt the actual scare factor of the movie. What do you think? Were you shaking in your boots?
You did the perfect transition. This is why you're the host here. You know the beats. That's why in the back of your mind from the first two movies, you know, like, oh, this is coming. It's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
And the other thing I was gonna say, and I'll say it now, is that this movie was way too much marketing, way too much, because I literally knew almost every single action scene was coming.
That's true, dude. Dude, that's
every single one for the most part. The Joseph Quinn one I didn't know. The subway one, you knew something was gonna happen, but you didn't know exactly what because they didn't show you the monsters in the trailer. And then the finale, they didn't show you that one, which was smart. But those are the only three I could not like predict as I was watching, and I think that was a big problem in this movie. And I don't think it's the movie's problem, and I don't want to knock it down on my score because of it, but it did have an impact on me. It really did. And I think that's why this movie, we mocked how much they were marketing this. How like every single movie, the trailers was kept being shown at every single Stanley Cup or NBA playoffs nonstop. And I think it had a real impact on my viewing in this. Also, I did see this at 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah, that's incredible, right? How many people were in the theater with you?
So I log in to my AMC app. I'm like, all right, when should I see this today? I see a 9:30 showing. I'm like, oh, I could see this in an hour. Perfect. And I click on it. It's an IMAX screen. It's a huge theater. Only 2 people were in that theater, and they were sitting third row in an IMAX theater. They had all the seats available to them, and they picked the third row in IMAX.
That's insane. That's absolutely insane. I know, like you were telling me about it. You wanted to tweet out like the screenshot of the seating chart, you know, just like how people were tweeting it out like during Oppenheimer and saying like this is 5 a.m. and people are at Oppenheimer. You're like, this is 9:30. These fucking psychos that are sitting in the front row for A Quiet Place at 9 a.m. that's beyond comprehension. Yeah, but dude, I can't agree with you more. I think the marketing, those scenes, if I didn't know they were coming, they would hit so much harder. Like that scene where they're turning the door, right? Why is that in the trailer? Right? That scene is like too long. And for that moment to see like the suitcase finally drop, I just found myself saying, oh, this is the scene. And I was just waiting. And you know, like they're kind of these monsters, these aliens are going to be crashing down through the glass ceiling. And you're like, okay, I know this is happening. The water sequence was cool though. That's where I was kind of like, wow, this is like true like action horror filmmaking right here that I didn't know Sarnowski had in his bag from like having Nick Cage as a chef that lives with a pig.
Yeah, sure.
What else do we want to talk about here? Ricky Flicks, Cat, good performance from the Cat. I do not like though. The Cat was good, but like the Cat was pretty much the third main character here. Like like second supporting behind what's it called? Joseph Quinn. But I just thought decent. One of the better, like I would say, animal performances I've seen in quite some time. The way it snuggles up to Joseph Quinn, having his anxiety attacks. I think that was a great subplot of the movie too. Like someone who is very much going to struggle in this world, feels alone, scared, can't talk and can't communicate his feelings. I think having a service cat like there and having a cat in general in this movie rather than any other type of animal, very smart. You know, who's making more sounds? Actually, Lupita Nyong'o opening the goddamn cans of cat food rather than the cat itself.
Yeah, the cat is clever, and the service cat helps in the Joseph Quinn storyline. Very good. That's why I thought, like, why is she bringing a cat to the puppet show? By the way, puppet show also smart in this franchise. Puppet shows, no words, smart. But I was like, oh, like, why are you bringing a cat? And I'm like, oh, service cat makes sense. But I will also just say, I think the Jack Campbell picture just gets me. Cats on a leash just don't work for me.
Was the cat on a leash?
Yeah, the cat was on a leash at the beginning before the invasion.
Okay, because then it goes loose, and the cat just like always knows how to find Lupita Nyong'o, and then knows how to find Joseph Quinn. Like has that special connection immediately with Joseph Quinn. I forgot the leash part though. I don't think the cat had a leash on in the gas station.
In the gas station, yes.
But then lets it loose, and then was easy going. It was also, now I'm thinking about it, one of the scariest scenes just came to me when the kids are underneath the fountain.
That was, dude, I wanted to bring that up. That was like oh my, number one, smart kids. Smart kids. And then two, I was like, they can't kill these kids. If they kill the kids, though, I would, what we said previously about this movie being scary, I would take it all back and be like, this movie was crazy.
Street cred. That would get you street cred. If you decide to pull that move. It's like Sarnowski making his first like action movie, and then he has the kids like die like at the first 30 minutes of it. That would be nuts. All right. So do you think it was overly sentimental in the third act, right? If we're like going to jump to a little bit of spoilers here, what happens is Joseph Quinn ends up taking Lupita Nyong'o's character to the jazz bar that her dad used to play beautiful piano in. She is craving some Patsy's pizza, like a drunk kid, 22 years old, going to Fordham, craving Patsy's pizza. And he ends up, honestly, it sucks that Patsy's was burned down. That hit me in the heart a little bit. But then Joseph Quinn's character goes to like a dollar slice shop, writes Patsy's on the box, hands it to Lupita Nyong'o. They have a very special moment. And then you have, after that, Lupita Nyong'o saving Joseph Quinn's character, sacrificing herself so he can jump on this boat. But do you think, Ricky Flex, that scene in the bar, was it too much for this type of movie?
Okay, first and foremost, the fact that I thought she wasn't serious about like going to get a slice of pizza at Patsy's after the invasion happened.
It's almost like a Harold and Kumar go to White Castle type of like vibe when you do that. It's like, what are we doing here? Like this is like, all the pizza.
But it's like like look around you. These buildings are burning down and collapsing. You think Patsy's not only is open or like able to get into it, the building's up and running, but there's just a slice of pizza waiting there for you. Yeah. And there's so many Patsy's in New York City. You have to go to the Harlem one. It makes sense. But it's like, I don't know. I thought it was a joke until they were there. I'm like, oh my God, they actually she was expecting to get a slice of pizza. Like they went from Chinatown to Harlem. It's been weeks probably. And you're expecting.
No, it probably hasn't. They made it seem like it was like 2 days.
To walk it, yeah, it definitely took a while. Yeah. Well, the point is, no way the pizza, if there was anything there, was still fine. I just think that I was in my head. I didn't think she was serious. I thought it was a line to kind of reminisce about, missing her dad. Just want to go back to Harlem, before she dies either of cancer or of the aliens. But the fact that she actually wanted the pizza was crazy to me.
I cringed when she took a bite of the pizza. I'm like, is that good? That's cheese on it, right? That's been cooked already, and that's been sitting outside probably. There's no electricity now. Like, this does not work. This does not work.
And I just to answer your question, because I got caught up in that. The Joseph Quinn part in the bar, there was no allusions to the magic trick. Just all of a sudden, he's a magician.
We don't really know what his job is. We don't know what he does.
But there was no foreshadowing or anything related to magic. Just out of nowhere, he's a magician. And I'm like, why is this?
Even Lupita Nyong'o doesn't even know about him. Like, the audience doesn't know. He could be anybody. He could have done anything there. I've been like, oh, yep, that's probably in his bag from something he's done in his past. I don't know whether that's believable or not. He seems like a little bit of a weird guy. So, like, weird guys know magic. So I kind of bought it.
But what I did like was after this, and it's right before the last scene. Dude, like, if you don't want to know this, tap the 15-second mark once. Dude, there was a jersey swap in this.
There was a jersey swap, like people swapping jerseys during the movie?
She gave her She
Oh, the
gave the
yellow,
sweater to him, and he gave his jacket to her. There was a jersey swap. Like that's crazy.
yeah, like it's like the two kids wearing like or like two kids like wasted at the end of the night saying what a night. Or we're switching jerseys here.
Yes.
I always remember each other. Or it's like freaking Kyrie Irving like swapping jerseys with LeBron at the end of a game type of vibe. A game recognized game. Like, hey, we
I
had a good
laughed
run.
out loud. I was like, oh my God. Jersey swap and Quiet Place Day One.
I think that's just like your brain that thought that. I don't even know if anyone else would have thought that, Ricky Flex. I also want to know, Ricky Flex, what direction do you think this franchise goes, right? This one's obviously a prequel that was dangerous. Our audience is going to accept it. Krasinski's not directing. He's not in it, but he's writing it. What direction do we take next with A Quiet Place? Like, I guess first off, before you answer that question, are we ever going to see these characters, meaning Joseph Quinn, again?
I think we see Joseph Quinn again. Lupita Nyong'o, again, if you don't want to know the ending, tap 15 seconds. She's dead in this. Absolutely dead. That's the final. She pulls the speaker. Aliens sneaking up right behind her. She's a goner.
Who's dead?
Yeah, so whatever. She'll never do this again. Good for her, though, Lupita Nyong'o, moving on in your career. Let's get into some more things and good things. But yeah, no, I think, and there was no post-credit scene, which I was actually shocked with. I thought they would bring it back to A Quiet Place Part 2 and back to where we left off, because
Diamond
people
Hansu.
forget, at the end of that movie, that was a cliffhanger. People forget. And now it's been how many years? 3 years? 4 years since that movie?
3
years. 3 years. And that's, I think, the clear indication of where we go next. You bring back Hansu again. You try to get Cillian Murphy, who clearly is open to doing IP again. He's doing Peaky Blinders. He's doing 28 Years Later. He would say yes to come back, in addition to Emily Blunt, obviously. So and post Barbenheimer. So I think you just keep going. Quiet Place Part 3. I think that's the next ideal spot to go. And what you could do is be like Joseph Quinn. You might not have seen him in Part 2, but you could just say he was in the village, and you could bring him back in Part 3.
That, I think, honestly, I was skeptical that we would see, like, if we would see Joseph Quinn again. He's not like an action, like, based on this performance, he's not like an action film lead, but like he's jumping on the boat with Djimon Hounsou. Like, you could easily say he's a part of that village. And there is a cliffhanger with Part 3 with that creature that goes on the boat, the alien that goes on the boat. So now it's like you could potentially have Cillian Murphy as an Oscar winner coming back to this elevated franchise. You could have Joseph Quinn with all that he has going on joining that cast. Emily Blunt still there. Holy shit, dude. Like that would be an amazing potentially final chapter of this franchise. I think that could be something that would be immediately one of the most anticipated movies of the year.
Totally agree. And I really think you could, because, like, all right, let me just say it like this. So you're on this island, right? The secluded community that they got away from it, right? But obviously they're not anymore. But this alien, he's kind of like, did the alien die in Part 2?
At the end? Like,
yeah.
Wait, which part? The boat?
On the land and the radio station.
I honestly don't remember. I just know it jumped on.
I think they killed it. But you could do a whole thing of like, the aliens know there's an island here, and like they're trying to get here, so we have to leave the island. So you could do this whole like big community trying to leave together, and like aliens picking them off one by one, and kind of just trying to find a final resting spot for Emily Blunt and co. and this community to kind of rekindle themselves to get a new community again. I think you could do that. There's obviously that's just the start. They would make that a lot better than what it just sounded like. But that's a good base to start from and kind of put this to a final conclusion, like you were saying.
Yeah, it's like maybe they run out of resources. They need some type of resource. They have to return to mainland in order to grab that resource, something like that, and then all mayhem ensues. But that's a great way to bring kind of this franchise full circle between the prequel and Part 2. Okay, Ricky Flex scores. What do you give A Quiet Place Day One?
I'm giving it 85.
Wow.
I liked it. There's not like a lot of problems with it, It's just like it doesn't feel like the first one. I think it's just like it's the third one. You're kind of used to them. You're used to this in particular. Yes, it's different, but it's still the same jump scares. It's still the same for the most part, just in a different environment, which I thought worked and was effective. But end of the day, you're just not the ceiling is just lower in my opinion. So 85 for me.
Yeah, I'm 77. I agree with your thoughts. Like this is like a franchise type of movie that's doing like that is unafraid to be a little bit different, to have the shorter runtime, to be concise, be a little bit more emotional. But is it kind of pushing the boundaries aside from that for this franchise? Am I left with a bunch of questions about this world still? Yeah, absolutely. Nothing really got answered for me there. But in terms of accomplishing its goal, Sarnowski did it, Lupita Nyong'o did it, Joseph Quinn did it. 77 out of 100. That's going to do it for our review of A Quiet Place Day 1.